We've been specifically targeting the zip code 64127, 64128 in Kansas City. It's just east of downtown. It's an area that's really good for appreciation. There's a lot of work happening in that area. They're building a new highway through there, new bridges. There's a lot of money, like the city and local government is coming in.
What are those markets in Kansas that you recommend?
Definitely say Overland Park. It's consistently ranked in the top 10 happiest cities in the U.S. It's a pretty small suburb from Kansas City. A very great place to live. It's super safe. There's not a lot of crime. There has been a lot of appreciation here. It's definitely a place to check out. North of Kansas City is also another market, Leavenworth. It's a more rental market. It's not as much homeowners. It's like 60% rentals. And the rent rates there are actually higher than they are in Kansas City proper.
What does it cost to repaint and an entire house on the interior nowadays?
I'm typically charging about $3.85 a foot. That's ceilings, doors, windows, trim, baseboards, a whole interior paint.
How about flooring?
As long as the floor is nice and flat, we can pull everything up and we're not having to make a lot of repairs. About $4.55 a square foot. For an ad bathroom, just basics. We're not doing anything super nice. We're typically looking at about $8,000.
How about a kitchen renovation?
Just basic cabinets, basic Formica countertop. We use a big single bowl sink. We always use a pull down spray faucet. Just the basics. I usually plan between $9,000 and $12,000, depending on what size it is.
How about HVAC replacement?
The HVAC industry just switched because of new EPA regulations. The cheapest I've been able to find, $6,500 on to about $8,000 for just a system. So that'd be condenser, coil, and furnace. The ductwork is usually pretty in line with the furnace. So if you spend $5,000 or $6,000 buying the furnace and the AC, you're probably going to spend $5,000 or $6,000 to have the ductwork done. If you're having foundation issues, you got to look holistically. What's causing the problem? If it's little tiny cracks, we're not worried about those concrete cracks. We all know that. But if it's big cracks, if you can stick your finger in that crack, not good. The standard charge is about $1,500 per pier if we're doing them on the inside just to hold everything in place if it's not a real bad issue. If we're digging up your foundation and having to jack the house up off the foundation and move the walls, you're probably somewhere in the $12,000 to $16,000 range.
How about window replacements?
That is a big ticket item that a lot of people don't realize. I'm typically running about $585 per window. If we need to do inside and outside trim, would be a little bit more.
How much it typically costs for a sewer line replacement, and how much it typically costs for a replumbing of the entire home?
The wastewater typically is between $4,000 and maybe $5,500. The freshwater, one-story house, let's say we have basement access and it's super easy, you might be as low as $2,500. For a two-story house, you may double. It may be $4,000 to $5,000. We got to get pipes up to the second floor and do crazy stuff, get behind the walls and stuff. Personally, I like to do a full electric upgrade. Typically, we're about between $6,000 and $8,000 to redo a full electric system. I just bring the house up to modern standards right from the get-go. I do that with electric and plumbing on every house that I personally buy. I know that 90% of the maintenance calls that I'm ever going to get are for those two things.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Affordable Housing and Real Estate Investing. Guys, today we've got the best contractor in the Kansas City area on the podcast today. This is the best podcast. If you don't know about us, this is the best podcast to learn about affordable housing investments. If you don't believe me, just ask ChatGPT. But we're the best because we bring you real information, practical advice from people that are doing the thing every single day. Not someone that's coming on a podcast saying, I got 5,000 doors, trying to brag about things, but this is all about you guys that are listening. But more importantly, Tyler Aikin, welcome back to the show, man. How you doing today, man?
Good. How you been?
Man, I'm fantastic, dude. I've been looking forward to this one for so long, man. Ever since we got such great feedback when you were first on the podcast. I feel like it's almost been a year or two now. And wow, time really flew by. And man, I just got to start by saying, first of all, thank you, brother, for believing in the podcast, man. I mean, without people like you believing in the podcast, dude, my first month when I started this podcast 3 years ago, we had 17 views, man. And I'm pretty sure that was just my mom. I was clicking on it, supporting me, bro. And I am so grateful that you believed in the mission. You believed in what we're doing. You came on, you spent the time, and then I knew people listened to it because I knew people were calling you because they heard the podcast. So, Tyler, I appreciate you so much, first and foremost, brother, for coming back on.
Absolutely.
All right, man, Tyler. So today, last time we talked a lot about Kansas City. I want to get people up to speed. What are you working on nowadays, man? What's happening in that market?
So I've been working with, as you know, with Matt and a group out of Salt Lake City. They've been keeping me pretty busy. We've got, 10 or 12 doors with them that we've acquired that have been basically full gut jobs. Just start over, tear everything out. And we've been putting them back specifically as 3.2s. We found that's no secret. Anyone that's in real estate knows that a 3.2 is really your best option. But we've been putting everything back as 3.2s since we're already having to gut these houses down to nothing anyway.
Tell us a little bit about your strategy, right? Where are you guys buying specifically to get these gut jobs, turn them around, do the full gut job, and then place a tenant right away? What areas are you guys looking at specifically?
So we've been specifically targeting the zip code 64127, 64128 in Kansas City. It's just east of downtown. It's not quite considered northeast Kansas City, but it is just east of downtown. And I'm sure we'll get into this later, but it's an area that's really good for appreciation. There's a lot of work happening in that area. They're building a new highway through there, new bridges. There's a lot of money, like the city and local government is coming in. Like,
are they investing a lot in the world, like getting ready for the World Cup right now? Is that where the work is? Because I always hear about like how whenever the World Cup visits the city, there's always a ton of investment into that city. Are you seeing any of that work in that area that you're investing in, or any of the other areas in Kansas City?
I have not seen any of that. I know. I stay in my lane, you know. But I haven't seen any of that. I know a couple people who have rented their apartments for the World Cup, but other than that, I haven't seen anything.
Okay, good. So 64127, 64128, that's where you're seeing, maybe, is it gentrification? Like a lot of people moving into that area? Like when you talk about a lot of activity happening in that area.
Yeah.
Like, why? What's your opinion, or what do you suspect is going on?
Well, so gentrification is always moving out, of course, right? But that's just the next logical step. It's just the next logical step. In 5 to 10 years, all those houses are going to be worth a lot more. They're going to look a lot nicer. There won't be as much blight.
Got it.
It'd be a much better area.
Okay, let's talk about the process, right? Because when people hear the word full gut job, a lot of them, I mean, honestly, they get pretty scared about that level of rehab. So tell us a little bit about, in general, what's the price range you're buying these properties at? And let's say high level for now, how much is a typical full gut renovation cost to turn it upside down and into that 3.2 beautiful home that you were talking about?
Well, that's a subjective question. It depends on how bad the house is when you start. Most of the time, we're keeping our rehabs between 60 and 90,000. And that pretty much encompasses everything. I'm sure you know prices in Kansas City are a lot less than out there on the coast. So if you're from California and you're thinking a $90,000 rehab, you're thinking, oh, that's a kitchen. That's a whole house here.
Okay. And these houses that you're buying, how are you guys sourcing these deals? Are these like, I knew back then you used to do like fire restorations. You've done the whole spectrum of type of renovations, right? So how are you guys getting these deals? You're getting them from wholesalers, you're buying them just on the market. Tell us a little bit about how you acquire these properties.
About the fire restorations, we actually just bought a fourplex that it was on fire and just burned all the way out the roof. I mean, it was a lot of damage. We were able to acquire it for not a whole lot. And so that gave us the ability to put a lot more into the rehab.
Well, tell us something about fire rehabs that a lot of people don't really know. Because Tyler, right? Because some people are always like, oh, it's burned down. Like, why would you just, like, would you just tear it down at that point? Like, how do you make that decision between just tearing it down, building it ground up, versus trying to salvage what's left for a fire rehab?
It's always a numbers game. It's always a numbers game. We know about what it costs to build a new house or build a fourplex. So will it cost less to rebuild it, or will it cost less to build a new one? 90% of the time, it's rebuild. Very,
90%
very
of the
few do we
time.
tear down.
Okay. And are you estimating like just on like $1 per square foot to rebuild the house? What does that range typically look like to rebuild a house, like your fourplex as an example?
So that one specifically, I don't know if I should get into the exact numbers of it because it's going to be up for sale. But by the time it's all said and done, we're probably only in it, in the rehab portion of it, we're only in it 40 to 50,000 per unit.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. That makes it, for some reason, sound a lot less scary, because whenever I think about like a fire restoration, it just, I don't know why I was thinking like $500,000 or something like that to rebuild something like that. So that's really interesting.
The thing with fire restorations or full gut jobs, anything that you're going to come across like that, where you can pick up these houses for $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, is it's just a process. And if you have a contractor who knows what they're doing, it's just another day at the office. It's a process. You have to do plumbing before you do electric. You have to do the electric before you do the mechanicals. You have to have all of your inspections before you do insulation. You have to do the insulation before you do drywall. It's just a process. Every house, even though they may not look the same, every house follows the same process.
Man, when you break it down like that so simply, dude, it's like, well, duh, right? When you talk to investors, because they just think about the problem, they don't think about the process. That's the problem.
Yeah, houses are not rocket science,
but being able to execute on that project is so important, because if you don't have a great contractor, you run over budget, you run over time so quickly that no matter how good you were with a freaking spreadsheet, all the numbers are wrong. All the numbers are off. So it doesn't matter how great you were with Excel spreadsheet if you don't have the team to execute. So Tyler, shed a little bit of light on sort of your team. And by that, I mean, I want to take this question two ways. One, how does an investor understand or try to vet a contractor to make sure that the contractor knows what they're doing? What's sort of your advice to, especially out-of-state investors that might be thinking, hey, I want to invest in Kansas City, but I'm scared. I don't know who I can trust in that area.
Word of mouth is always, to me, most important. So if you talk to some investor friends and they say, oh, I use this guy, it went great, that's worth more than any licensing. Or the other thing is the network that a contractor has. With me personally, and I'm not saying I know you're saying I'm the best. I'm not. I may not be the best. I may not be the best. But realistically, the contractor's network and how long they've been in business in that city is going to tell you all you need. If you called me and asked for a service that I don't provide, that's fine. I've got a guy. It doesn't matter what that service is. I've got a guy for it. And I'm going to stand behind any of the subs that show up on one of my jobs, or if I recommend them. I've been doing business with most of these guys 10 plus years because I've been here forever, doing this forever. So as you know, we all used to be apprentices, or we worked as maintenance guys. We all went on to start our own companies. Some went on to be inspectors, and we know them that way, whatever. And so everybody's, kind of leveled up and leveled up and leveled up. And now we're all kind of, the old guys that everybody goes to. Hey, how do I solve this problem? Or, hey, what do you do? What do you know about this? Or who should I contact for this?
Man, and that's just such a great principle of how your A players hang around with A players. And and this is so good, because asking for referrals, that's so important. I mean, I've met investors. I mean, I've met contractors that would not give me any references. And for me, that just felt like a red flag all the time, because I was like, hey, if you were so good and you always delivered, then I bet there would be someone that's willing to give you a referral, or just like a reference saying like, hey, I worked with Tyler. He did a splendid job on my renovation. And sometimes I just feel like it's a red flag. Like, do you feel that way? Like, do you always
Yeah,
keep good references?
absolutely. And I keep a folder on my Google Drive because people ask me for that all the time. So I keep a folder that's got a stack of names, 30, 40, 50, I don't know how many's in there, but a bunch. And a dozen or so projects. Hey, here's a house that we did from start to finish. And the way I organize my Google Drive is it's all by address. So it'll have an address. You can click on that address and then it has the date. So it's like January 1st, 2025, January 2nd, 2025. And you can see the work as it's happening day by day.
Okay, guys. I mean, I have tried to bring to all of you guys that are listening right now tremendous value because now you can understand just exactly how to vet a contractor. Now, again, I'm not saying Tyler is the best contractor in Kansas City, but now I've at least brought you the first step because sometimes a lot of people, man, they don't even know how to take the first step. And at the very minimum, if you reach out to Tyler and you say, hey, Tyler, this is what I'm thinking for my project. Can you give me a quote? Using that quote, using Tyler's reputation, now you can figure out, hey, maybe I can get another quote or two. And now you have a 3-bid situation. Now you can kind of compare apples to apples about what the job is, what the scope is, and whether or not the guy you're talking to actually is who he said he's going to be, and whether or not he's going to do the thing that he said he was going to do. It's as simple as that when you think about how to break down the process of vetting a contract. Just like how Tyler talked about, there is a process to go through a renovation for a home. There is a process to go and vet your contractors if you just stay methodical to it and you stay objective to it. And especially if you have that advantage, key advantage of the first step, which is talking to Tyler if you're in the Kansas City market.
Also had I've put in estimates for investors previously, and in my price point isn't where they're trying to be. They're trying to be a little under me, and that's fine. That doesn't hurt my feelings. I know the game, but they will throw me a little bit of cash and say, hey, can you go check up on this guy? Can you make sure things are happening properly? And yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to help in any way I can. So they want a little bit of extra project management, so they can be more hands-off because they're out of state and they don't know these guys or they don't know the local codes or even the inspectors or whatever. That I'm glad to do that too.
Man, all right. So this is good. So we talked a little bit about how to vet contractors. We talked about where you're buying right now. I knew last time we talked a lot about the Kansas City side, but right now, to be honest with you, man, right now I think cash flow is a little harder to come by. And honestly, I personally, this is just a selfish question, I've been trying to focus more on just like, hey, where are my prospects for appreciation? Because I'm okay not making any cash flow if the prospect for appreciation is a little bit higher. So let's talk about the Kansas side. I knew last time you talked about Johnson County, but what might be the neighborhoods or the pockets of areas where you might recommend for investors to check out, using them as rentals still, but maybe they don't need to prioritize cash flow as much, but they want higher prospects for appreciation? What are those markets in Kansas that you recommend that people look into?
Definitely say Overland Park. It's consistently ranked in the top 10 happiest cities in the U.S. It's a pretty small suburb from Kansas City. It's actually where I live, so I'm a little biased. I think it's pretty awesome. But it is actually like a very great place to live. It's super safe. There's not a lot of crime. There has been a lot of appreciation here. So I don't know if you'll be able to capture a ton of appreciation over the next, 5-10 years, depending on what the markets do. It may continue the way it's been, but that's definitely a place to check out.
I mean, obviously it's speculative, right? When you think about appreciation, but I've seen investors now over the last 2 or 3 years, hey, I bought in areas where the neighborhoods are probably like a C neighborhood, C- neighborhood. And hey, I've had that mistake. I've had my HVAC unit stolen right off the property because I didn't have a cage on yet. And people underestimate the quality of the neighborhood and also sometimes the preventative things that you could have done, just like putting on a cage on your HVAC unit, right? For me, it cost like $90 to put a cage on, but I didn't do it until it was too late. And then I had to spend like $5,000 replacing a whole HVAC unit. So it's just like these little mistakes, they stack over time, but you got to figure out where you want to be. And then that's why I want to bring on Tyler to talk about Johnson County in Kansas so he can tell you a little bit about Overland Park. Now, what kind of properties are in highest demand in Johnson County? Are these single family homes? Are these townhomes? what's sort of been your impression of what sort of asset class has been highest in demand?
Yeah, since Overland Park has a little bit higher median income, it's mainly single family homes that are in the higher demand. And even with like retirees, we're seeing like single family, single story homes that are actually performing better because as somebody's grandparents or whatever, as they're downsizing later in life, it's easier for them to there's no stairs, they can drive right up to the front door. So single story, single family homes have really been historically the most popular here.
Got it. And there are a good amount of Section 8 investors here. What would you say in Johnson County for voucher holders? Like, do you think they're typically families? They're typically like single workers? Like, what sort of size of unit should investors be looking for in Johnson County specifically?
Almost always you're going to be looking at families. You're going to be looking for the 3-2 model. That's for certain the most popular here. I don't know the exact numbers. I haven't looked at them in a few months, but there is a waiting list. There's more people with vouchers than there are voucher accepted houses.
Got it. And tell us a little bit about, I mean, you've obviously gotten Section 8 inspections on both sides between Johnson County and Kansas City. What has been the typical timeline for how long it takes to pass a Section 8 inspection? And tell us the difference between like what you're seeing maybe on Johnson County in the Kansas side versus the Kansas City side.
Well, the Kansas City, Missouri side, I'm not trying to disparage. I want to make that really clear. But the Kansas City, Missouri side is wildly unorganized. We've had several houses that we're trying to move a tenant from one house to another, even at the same rate, just so that we can remodel a house and put the tenant in something that's already remodeled. And they did away with actual caseworkers here. So it's you just call and you either get somebody that can help you or you don't. And our management has been calling, time and time again, waiting on hold and just no movement, months at a time without any movement. So the Kansas side is definitely more organized and consistent in that regard.
Man. All right. Well, that's good to know because, I mean, dude, I have a property in another market where the inspection from the time I accepted a tenant it took 3 months just to get an inspection out.
Yeah.
It's rough. And I think that's a lot of things that a lot of Section 8 investors don't understand, that every single area that you invest in, it's all local. The timelines are very dependent on their resources, their responsiveness, and how on top are you on top of the entire process. Even with Tyler and his team staying on top, calling every single day, sometimes they still don't get responses. And he's got a much more experienced team than some newbie from out of state trying to do it for the first time, thinking like, oh, the World Cup is coming here. I'm going to buy in Kansas City because that's what's going to happen. I can just see this wave happening without very much understanding the execution steps that you have to follow and the level of complexity that might come up during the entire process. So I'm glad you dropped those little nuggets there, Tyler. All right, well, besides Overland Park, like, is there another area in the Johnson County area that like you would recommend people look into?
It's not Johnson County. I think it's, I don't know, it's Leavenworth County or something, but actually Leavenworth, north of Kansas City, is also another market. I've got a personal friend that has been investing there, and it's a more rental market. It's not as much homeowners. It's, like 60% rentals. And
interesting.
It's been really good for him. We've done 2 houses for him up there, and the rent rates there are actually higher than they are in Kansas City proper.
No way. And in Leavenworth, is that under like a different housing authority? What housing authority are you working with there?
It will be their local, whatever their local housing authority is. I don't know that specifically.
Got it. And no issues with like inspection timelines or anything like that with that housing authority?
We haven't had any issues at all. We've, on both sides, where he's been able to call and get his inspections, his Section 8 or their version of housing authority. I've been able to call and get structural inspections and things like that where it was, oh, we can be there tomorrow. So it's been pretty great.
Whoa. All right. If you guys don't recognize what just happened, like Tyler just gave you guys probably millions of dollars of value in that little piece of nugget, sharing that gem with all of you guys, like just there. Just saying, guys, like this is why you got to listen to the entire podcast. You got to reach out to Tyler, at least get his opinion, because these little details about how long it takes to get an inspection, that will save you thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands of dollars, easily. Every single project, hands down. All right. So, Tyler, I know we've always talked about you working with investors. I always like to talk a little bit about the lessons or the mistakes that investors always make. And the reason I share this on the podcast is because, well, a lot of people are afraid to take action. A lot of people want to make an impact, right? The people that are listening right now, they want to make an impact with their time, their energy, their resources, but they're always afraid to take that first step. And I always like that, hey, if someone can just pull back the curtain a little bit, it's like, hey, this is the problem. This is how we solved it. Then they can at least think back and like, hey, if this problem ever happens to me, I'm going to feel a little bit more confident next time because I know that Tyler, an X investor, went through this problem and solved it. So what sort of mistakes are you seeing investors still make nowadays when it comes to investing in properties, specifically in your market?
So especially in Kansas City, Missouri, like what we were just talking about, thinking that once the construction portion of the job is done, that you'll be able to just throw a tenant right in there. It's going to take a month, 2 months just to get your housing authority inspections. So not budgeting for that is huge. I've come across that several times. Additionally, not having licensed contractors, I've had to step into projects recently where houses got a stop work because the contractor that was working wasn't licensed to pull the permits and they were just kind of doing it under the table, which happens all the time. And I'm not saying that they're doing a bad job. You just have to have that documentation from the city.
Man,
so that's another one.
I mean, that goes into the resale value of the house. Like usually, I mean, you buy a house, they're like, hey, was this and this permitted? Especially if you're trying to add square footage or you're doing anything like that. I mean, it's kind of hard for the appraiser to take that into consideration if you did not get a permit for like the addition. So
right. We, kind of my forte is like forced appreciation value add. So we'll find a 3-1 house that's, 1,100 square foot or so, and I'll figure out a way to work another bathroom in there. And if you're not permitting those, if you're kind of raw dogging it, the city does not like it. And when they see it advertised, they're going to come knocking on your door.
Man, I'm so glad you just took that decision away from someone that might have been thinking about doing that exact process.
Yeah.
And trying to skip it. Oh my goodness, don't do that, please. So I got to ask this question because I hear a lot of investors now, it's a different market completely. Like in Detroit, a lot of people are now seeking like 4-bedroom properties. Why not turn these properties into 4 bedrooms instead of just like going from a 3-1 to 3-2? If you're doing all this work, why not turn it into like a 4-2? What's sort of the rationale there?
I don't know. To be completely honest, I just do what the investors tell me to do. That's what they like. So that's
because like that's so interesting because in Detroit, I think the latest stat I heard was they had like 10,000 voucher holders that were in 3-bedroom units, but they technically qualify for a 4-bedroom home. So there's a significant amount of demand there. Maybe that's something that we can follow up with you next time when you talk to the housing authorities. Like, hey, what is the highest in demand area?
Yeah, I will tell you that the units that are kind of on the extreme where it's like a 1-bed, 1-bath or a 4-bed, 1-bath or 2-bath, I will tell you those typically once they're rented, they stay rented. They don't have as high of a turnover. It's a very specific market. It's kind of a niche market, but once those are rented, they tend to stay rented for longer.
Well, that might make sense because then people probably understand like it's pretty hard to find a 4-bedroom unit or a 1-bedroom unit, especially if you're an investor, you're trying to maximize your cash flow and you just can't achieve the same amount of cash flow with a 1-bedroom or find enough properties with the space to turn it into a 4-bedroom. That makes a lot of sense when you say it that way. And Tyler, I knew last time we talked about when we had you on a podcast, we got a great amount of feedback, just helping to understand like, hey, in general, what does a X rehab might cost, right? So for people that are trying to estimate, like when they're underwriting, when they're looking at a property, maybe I can kind of just rapid fire for you, like on like $1 per square foot perspective, like what does it cost to like repaint and like an entire house on the interior nowadays?
I'm typically charging about $3.85 a foot for interior paint. That's ceilings, doors, windows, or trim, baseboards, a whole interior paint.
Nice. That's pretty good.
There's prep and stuff that's involved with that, but the actual like cost of the paint, we're usually right there. If we've got to prime and go over some kind of bright pink or something like that, it may be a little bit more, but on average, that's about what it's running.
Okay, that's helpful. How about like flooring, like putting in like luxury vinyl plank, LVP flooring into what's that running up on $1 per square?
Long as the floor is nice and flat, we can pull everything up, and we're not having to make a lot of repairs. About $4.55 a square foot.
Oh, that's really cheap, dude. I was at like $7 a square foot at my property in Scottsdale. Wow. I mean, not cheap, affordable. Excuse me, affordable. How about your typical bathroom rehab? So separate out between what does it cost to like renovate an existing bathroom versus adding a bathroom.
So for an add bathroom, just basics. We're not doing anything super nice. We're typically looking at about $8,000. That's a little bit of framing, and then just putting your basic Home Depot plain white tub, a fiberglass surround. I like to use a one-piece fiberglass surround, less likely to leak. It's more functional for the long term. A basic vanity that covers the floor, a toilet, a mirror, medicine cabinet, GFCI, a light, a fan, just your basic bathroom. So if we can find a spot in the house where we're not having to actually add on, where we can find a corner, and then we're only framing out 2 walls and adding a door to make, the space for the bathroom, that's usually, I like to budget about $8,000 for that.
Got it. And when you find that little space, are you talking about the proximity to like other plumbing in the vicinity? Is that what we're talking about to make it more efficient when you're adding a bathroom? Like you're trying to find an area in the house that's near existing plumbing?
That doesn't matter so much to me because we can, as long as it has a basement, we can make the plumbing go wherever we need. Got it.
What about renovating a bathroom?
If there's an existing bathroom there and we're just gutting it down, you're only looking at about, it depends on exactly what's going on with it. If it's tub, surround, yada, yada, you're probably looking at about $6,000, $6,500. It's not a lot less. By the time we've added a bathroom or renovated a bathroom, it's almost the same damn thing.
Good. That's really, really good to know. Because I think at the end of the day, people can just start understanding like, hey, you don't need the exact amount. But if you want to, how do I say it? Great contractors are typically very busy. And if you learn how to underwrite and you stop sending contractors out there to give you a bid every single time, at least get a rough range. So like, hey, okay, this looks like it could be potentially a deal. Let me actually call Tyler right now and say, hey, Tyler, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm estimating. I've done in the legwork. Because now you can have a little bit more respectability from your contractors. Because like, okay, this guy's not a tire kicker. He or she is not wasting my time. We're just trying to get me to do free quotes all the time, right? This is what's going to separate you out as a more credible investor. Just by listening to this podcast again with Tyler, man. This is, all right. We got to keep on going. How about a kitchen renovation, right? Like full gut kitchen renovation. Like what might that cost folks?
So just basic cabinets, basic Formica countertop. I like a single bowl sink. We use a big single bowl sink. We always use a pull down spray faucet. Just the basics. I usually plan between $9,000 and $12,000, depending on what size it is.
Got it. And when you don't have to do a full gut, like what kind of jobs do you typically find yourself doing for a kitchen? Are you just like repainting the cabinets as an example, or just removing like the countertop? Maybe you're going to a little bit more upscale granite countertop, something like that. Like what's sort of the typical rehab scope that you're doing for not a full gut renovation of the kitchen?
Yeah, we do a lot of just cabinet door replacements where the boxes are fine. We're just upgrading the doors so that they are a more modern style, a shaker or something like that. And then we're just painting the cabinets. Sometimes there's repairs. Maybe the bottoms have gotten wet or something. So we're going to cut out the rotten wood, whatever. With those, it kind of ranges all over, depending on how much is needing to be done and how much you want to spend on your countertops. It could be anywhere from a couple thousand to, 6, 8, 10,000 even.
Right.
There's a huge range there.
Yeah. So let me break that down then for people that might just want a little bit more granular. Let's say you just want to redo the cabinets, right? Replacing the doors and repainting it. What might that simple job cost?
Just doing a countertop and doors?
Yeah.
If you're using a granite countertop, it's pretty standard. Figure $65 a foot for your countertop. That's just a pretty standard across the board type price. It can be lower, it can be higher. Middle of the road, $65 a foot. And then your doors, you're going to spend, I don't know, $60 to $80 per door.
And that includes replacing the door and also repainting the cabinets too?
Yeah, you'll spend, we like to use a real high-end urethane paint. It's almost like an enamel. So because cabinets take a lot of abuse. So we want to make sure that they're well protected. They're not, you come back in 6 months, they're not going to be all chipped up or anything like that.
Man, that's a great point. I love that you guys use higher quality products to provide and just give more longevity to the unit.
Yeah.
It's so smart. That's a general principle that I always advise people to take on, because if you can solve all these problems up front, man, so many people underestimate the time and energy that it takes to repair issues down the road had you just done it right up front. I mean, sometimes people quit real estate because they like, I had all these problems, but those problems only came up because you didn't fix it up front. And now you're just paying the price later down the road when you could have been focused on scaling your portfolio, but instead you're fixing the problems that you didn't fix in the first place.
Right. Yeah. And I like to be able to say, oh, look at that house. I did that house 2 years ago. Haven't had one single call. I like that because the less I'm in the house, the more money the investor is making. And I'm not an idiot here. If the investors aren't making money, then I'm not making money. So, the goal is that everybody makes money and it works out,
Dude, so smart. All right. We talked about the kitchen. We talked about bathrooms, painting, flooring. What does a roof replacement cost now to replace an entire roof for a property?
I'd say probably in the Kansas City market, on average, you're spending between $8,000 and $11,000 would be a pretty safe bet. Depends on the height and the steepness of the roof, how many layers it has, if there's any repairs that need made. But between $8,000 and $11,000 would be real average.
And what type of roof should people be focused on in KC, right? Because sometimes like you guys have like wild storms there in that market. Like you just recommending like regular shingle type of roofing, or what's sort of the type of roofs that you're recommending?
Yeah, we typically go for a class 3 or a class 4 impact resistant shingle, just asphalt shingles in a heritage style. I think they funnel water better than like a 3-tab or any of the other like more architectural shingles. And there's no reason to go with those real high-end shingles that it'll double the cost of your roof. It's not adding any value.
So good to know. Tyler just saved you another 10 grand, guys. Just saying with this podcast. Like, there's so many gems being dropped right now. I hope people are taking notes. How about a HVAC replacement, right? Maybe just a condenser or just a HVAC unit replacement versus how much it would typically cost to like put in new ducting for the entire house.
So that's a really loaded question right now. The HVAC industry just switched because of new EPA regulations. They just switched from the standard 410 refrigerant that has been used for the last, 20 years to our 454, I think, B or something like that. So the new systems are actually a little bit more expensive. And the problem with that is, obviously they're more expensive, right? That's a problem. Mm-hmm. But really the problem there is that, let's say you have an AC unit stolen and you have a 410A system. You can't buy the 410A coil replacement or condenser replacement anymore. So you have to do the whole system now.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so it's a big deal to get your air conditioner stolen at this point. Like it's a big deal. The cheapest I've been able to find, $6,500 on to about 8,000 for just a system. So that'd be condenser, coil, and furnace.
Yeah. Because if someone rips out your AC unit, I mean, you're out of luck. You have to replace the entire system.
You have to replace the whole thing at this point.
Oh, man. So, guys,
yeah,
please put a cage on your HVAC unit. But more important,
do
now
that.
You know.
Definitely put a cage on your HVAC units, always.
Oh, my goodness. All right. So, 6,500 to 8,000 for a new AC unit. What about like ductwork? Like when, maybe let's start a little higher level. When do you recommend people like redo their ductwork for their HVAC system?
So I typically recommend that in two scenarios. One, if the house is really old and there's not actual ductwork in the house, like especially if it's a 2-story house and the house is 100 years old, there's not ducts on the second floor. I promise you, there's not. So then that's something you have to do. Additionally, if it's fire damaged, you want to replace that. You want to replace that ductwork because you cannot clean the soot out of the ducts, and it's going to cause your house to smell like smoke and have soot for the rest of your life. And that's not a good option.
No, you don't want to live in that. And how much would that like replacing ductwork system like cost typically? Rough range.
The ductwork is usually pretty in line with the furnace. So if you spend $5,000 or $6,000 buying the furnace and the AC, you're probably going to spend $5,000 or $6,000 to have the ductwork done. If you have a larger house and it takes a larger furnace and AC and you spend $8,000, you're probably going to spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $8,000 to get that ductwork done.
All right, shoot, that's expensive. Whew.
Yeah.
That's a really quick. So I love that we're getting into all these numbers. What are there sort of like atypical renovations like that you kind of handle that people don't really know a lot about? Maybe foundation issues or any structural issues? Like what kind of issues can investors expect to potentially pop up that isn't as common, but they might pop up? Tell us a little bit more about those issues.
Foundation issues are definitely something that's prevalent here in the Kansas City area. I know on the coast you don't have a lot of homes with basements. Here, they dig down and make basements, and if the house is 100 years old, they used what they had. So a lot of these basements are made out of rock and like actual rocks, and then they just concrete around the rocks. And so over time, that concrete can degrade and start to deteriorate. Or let's say your gutters. If your downspouts aren't working properly, it's just shooting that water right down the foundation, which then causes the dirt to erode and the foundation wants to bow or move. So you got to kind of look holistically. If you're having foundation issues, you got to look holistically. What's causing the problem? Because the foundation issue may actually be the symptom of another problem. So even if you repair the foundation, it may not solve the problem, and you'll be in that same situation a few years down the road.
Man, I mean, obviously you got an eye for spotting foundation issues. I mean, how might an investor even think about it? Like what kind of signs should they look for that might indicate that there is some sort of underlying foundation issue going on with the home?
There's two ways to spot a foundation issue. One, everybody knows you got big cracks. Obviously you see cracks, there's a problem. Now, if it's little tiny cracks, we're not worried about those concrete cracks. We all know that. But if it's big cracks, if you can stick your finger in that crack, yeah, not good. Also, just something that's super easy that I teach all my guys to do is they'll just go in the basement and throw a level up and down on the walls. And if the wall's not straight, if it's leaning in, that's a problem. If it's leaning out, that's also a problem. It's, we're not as worried about, we don't see that very often. But if the walls are leaning in, that means it's getting pressure from the outside that's pushing in. So that's why your walls will be leaning in. Is there some kind of pressure? Usually hydraulic pressure. It's from water, almost always. So you have to figure out how to grade or get the water, fix your gutters, get the water away from the house, and then you can actually deal with the foundation issues.
And give people a little bit more clarity. Like, how do you deal with the foundation? So obviously, if there are waters coming in from your gutters, it's sinking in, that's causing pressure to go into the house. That's where you get the walls leaning in.
Right.
How do you actually fix that problem then? Push it back outwards.
So it depends on how bad the problem is. Sometimes we take I-beams and we use a concrete saw and cut down into the concrete floor. And we put these big I-beams in and just shove them up against the wall. And then we concrete them in. And then you use big structural lag screws at the top to hold them with the floor joists, because the whole weight of the house is holding it at that point. So if it's not like really leaning in, we'll do that. If it is like really leaning in and it's causing the house to get unlevel, something like that, then what you have to do is we have to dig out the outside. We have a mini excavator and we dig out the outside, and then we use typically 20 or 50 ton bottle jacks and 6x6 posts. And with angle iron, we'll anchor down into the concrete and use the posts with the bottle jacks to push them back level and then set the house down on them.
Whoa. I don't know why I just got so excited, like listening to that. I was like, whoa, that seems pretty cool. All right. Well, cost wise, help investors put a number to it. It was like the smaller issue where you're just kind of putting the I-bars down there and kind of stabilizing everything. What might that cost versus the bigger job where you actually had to bring in the excavators?
So you're looking at about standard charge is about $1,500 per pier if we're doing them on the inside just to hold everything in place if it's not a real bad issue. Mm-hmm. If we're digging up your foundation and having to jack the house up off the foundation and move the walls, you're probably somewhere in the $12,000 to $16,000 range.
Ooh. But honestly, not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was expecting every foundation issue to be like 30 or 50 grand. So maybe I should have been the perfect investor for you.
If that's what it costs on the coast, I might come out there and really start making a bag.
Dude, I mean, your HVAC unit at like 6,500 to 8 grand. I mean, my initial quotes out here for just an HVAC unit is like 13 grand, just like that. Like, I feel like everything has like an extra 50% premium here in California where I live. So just automatically, it kind of gets jacked out. But man, I'm so glad you went through those foundation issues, because I think now that's the number one thing a lot of people don't talk about. They don't talk about foundation issues because they don't even know how to spot the foundation issue. But you just gave a perfect rule of thumb. If you can stick your entire finger into that crack, chances are that's more than like a settling crack.
Yeah.
And should they be looking in the basement only, or should they anywhere in the house if they see a crack that big?
If you see, occasionally you'll see cracks on the first floor, second floor, and that can be through the foundation shifting. But most of the time you're going to see, if you have unlevel floors, if you have a doorway where the door doesn't fit in the doorway anymore in the door jamb, then you've got a foundation issue. But most of the time you can look at the basement in 2 minutes and tell all of that.
You should just film content nowadays, Tyler, where you walk into a basement, you're like, yeah, foundation issue. Yeah, foundation issue. That's what you should be doing, man. That would be so cool. All right. What about other type of rehabs that people are not thinking about? Like, how about window replacements? Like, when should people replace their windows, and how much might that cost?
Window replacements is always kind of a weird subject, because that is a big ticket item that a lot of people don't realize really is a big ticket item. Oh, yeah. On the low end, I have a supplier that I've been working with since, 2009 or so. And we've kind of been friends for a long time. So he always cuts me the best deal on the windows. I'm typically running about $585 per window. And that, if we need to do inside and outside trim, would be a little bit more. But if we can just pull the old window out, pop the new one in, about $585 per window. So you figure if a house has 20 windows, which is about average, you're looking at like $10,000.
Man,
so it can add up pretty quick.
And when do you recommend people replace like windows? Like when you see the seals all broken up, or when do you think an investor should do that for their house?
I always recommend to do it at the front when the house is vacant, because it's kind of an invasive process. We have to like be in every room in the house. We're tearing things out. It's loud. Tenants hate it when we're doing it later on. So I would say to do it up front. Most of these houses that we're coming across in these lower price ranges, they have old windows that are single pane. They're made of wood. They're half rotten. Half of them don't even open, which, means you can't pass a Section 8 inspection. If you do it from the beginning and you're using double pane windows, it makes the house so much nicer and so much more efficient for heating and cooling, things like that. And when the inspectors see that, they like to see that kind of stuff. They say, oh, this guy really cares about this house, or they're really doing the right thing here. They're making these houses nicer. And at the end of the day, that's what, the city and the tenants, everybody involved, they want to bring the area up. It's just a benefit all the way around.
Man, and I think that's just so good for people to understand that you are creating a reputation for yourself, especially when you are bringing your asset, your home, to very much above average. Like learning to replace the windows up front, that goes so far for your reputation with your local inspectors, especially if you're going to get them out to your next inspection. They're like, oh, that's the guy or that's the contractor that Key used, Tyler. They put in windows last time and they always do a good job. So now you always have a preconceived connotation that, hey, this investor knows what they're doing and they're going to take care of the house, and they're going to be much more welcoming for you.
Yeah.
Honestly, people just underestimate that level of reputation risk when you decide to cut corners and everything. So let's talk about, Tyler, what other renovations do you always recommend investors take a look at? We talked about flooring, HVAC, kitchen, bathrooms, windows, foundation. What other type of renovations have we even talked about that you thought or you think would be really important for investors to consider?
So I like to do a full electric upgrade. I just bring the house up to modern standards right from the get-go. I do that with electric and plumbing on every house that I personally buy. And the reason is because I've been in this business long enough, I've been in the game long enough, I know that 90% of the maintenance calls that I'm ever going to get are for those two things. So if I eliminate that from the get-go, I can tell you, I have more than a dozen houses. In the last 3 years, I've probably had 3 maintenance calls total. And it's because I did the electric and the plumbing on every single house.
What a blessed life. 3 calls in that long period. Are you kidding me? That's a life that everybody should be going after. Are you kidding me?
It almost never will I have a maintenance call. It's super rare. And of course, we handle it immediately when we do have a maintenance call. But it is so few and far between. I don't even budget any time for my workers, for my guys to be at my houses because it is so few and far between. I just, hey, I need to have you go check on whatever it is. It's usually a clogged toilet or something like that. It's something small. It's not like a big deal.
Yeah, dude. I make sure that all my rentals, they have these high pressure assisted toilets so that it's super strong. And dude, I never get a clogged toilet call before,
right?
In all my entire years. And sometimes people underestimate. If you spend an extra $500 to put in a pressure assisted toilet, now all of a sudden, dude, if you have to get a plumber out there to go unclog a toilet, that probably costs you $100, $200, and you try to replace the toilet, then that costs you another $200, $300. Just do it up front.
It makes such a big difference to just handle that stuff up front and just plan for those expenses. And if the house doesn't work, be patient. Find a house that does work, and then you're going to be problem-free for years.
And for people that don't know what redoing the entire electric means, right? Tell us, people, why would you ever replace the electric panel and I guess rerun wire throughout the house? Is that what you mean by replacing electric?
Yeah, you would want to do that. So typically, we're about, between $6,000 and $8,000 to redo a full electric system. Modern codes, at least in Kansas City, I don't know what it is everywhere else, but modern codes is a 200 amp service panel. 30, 40, 50 years ago, when most of these houses were getting upgraded electric, because they originally had, knob and tube wire or something like that. These houses, you'll typically see either 60 or 80 amp breakers. So modern appliances, are putting too much of a draw on the breaker box itself, and it becomes a fire risk at some point.
Right.
So
fire risk, and it's also if you have too many appliances, then you start tripping the breakers all the time, right?
Right. Yeah. And I see it all the time. I just replace it. It's especially while the house is vacant. When you first buy the house, just get it replaced. It's easy to do. It's $6,000 to $8,000 in most cases. Sometimes it can be more. Sometimes it can be less if it's a real small house or it's real easy to get things done. And it really makes a difference in the way your appliances run and the longevity, because if your appliances are underpowered, it's actually just as bad for them as if they're overpowered.
Oh, dude, I did not know that one.
Yeah.
Thank you for shedding light.
So it'll make your appliances last longer. It'll make your, it'll make your tenants call in less and be frustrated with you less. It's just, better for everybody in the long run.
Right. And for $6,500, $8,000, if you put it into your numbers, I mean, if you're looking for the burst strategy, you can kind of communicate the scope of rehab that you have done. And electrical upgrades typically get counted towards the appraised value of the home. So you're more likely than not, you're getting it back. Now, in terms of replumbing the entire house, right? When do you need to replumb the entire house? Are you just talking about the sewer line, or are you talking about all the pipes inside? Tell us a little bit about why should someone replumb their entire house, and what sort of indicators might be that will tell the investor, hey, you got to replumb the house.
Okay. So with wastewater, we look at cast iron. Most of the time, the cast iron's been there since the house was built. It's 100 years old. It's reached the end of its useful service life. And when you run a scope through there, if you just run a camera down the sewer, you will see that, in a 4-inch pipe, you may have 2 inches because of actual, water that's able to flow through there, because it's rusted and corroded, and there's so much stuff strangling that down. So when I see cast iron, or if I see lead's a definite, like, it has to be replaced. It's not negotiable. And if I see cast iron, maybe sometimes it's in really good shape and we can leave it and kick that can another 10 years down the road, something like that. But most of the time I'm saying, hey, we gotta put new PVC in here and replumb this. And as far as freshwater goes, if you have galvanized plumbing, same thing with the cast iron. It shrinks down, and it may have just a pea-sized hole where the water's coming through, and it's just corroded all the way through that whole pipe. And it's kind of like what you see, like, sometimes someone turns on the faucet and the first spritz of water that comes out of the faucet is brown or something like that.
Yeah.
It's exactly because of those pipes. I recommend PEX. That's not everybody does it the same. So if the house ever freezes, it's easier to repair. It's cheaper to repair. And the PEX can actually expand a little bit and deal with some of those colder temperatures. So it kind of makes things a little bit easier that way.
Yeah. And people underestimate, like you just talked about a big problem. Like, what if it freezes over? Man, I can't tell you how many times, like, when I heard about what's happening in Texas when they had the big freeze, and I was like, I thought we solved this problem and then I was born in the Northeast. So I was like, I thought we solved this problem like 100 years ago. I was like, they have problems because it's too cold? It doesn't make any sense. But you guys, so PEX plumbing, that's great because it handles the extreme weathers a lot better. And tell us a little bit about how much it typically costs for like a sewer line replacement, and how much it typically costs for like a replumbing of the entire home, especially if you see galvanized piping there.
Okay. The wastewater, I typically is between $4,000 and maybe $5,500, something like that. The freshwater, it depends if it's a 2-story or a 1-story house. 1-story house, let's say we have basement access and it's super easy. You might be as low as $2,500. For a 2-story house, you may double. It may be, $4,000 to $5,000 for a 2-story house. So we got to get pipes up to the second floor and, do crazy stuff, get behind the walls and stuff.
Got it. No, that's super helpful, man. I mean, I just remember all my rental properties that I've ever acquired, they all had sewer problems. Like, one had to be completely replaced, like almost $7,000. This is in Scottsdale. and another we were able to put in like liner in there so that it kind of just kept the existing structure in place. And that was like without having to replace the entire sewer line. So that's what we had to do in that market specifically. Man, that's so good. Man, this has been, I know we're at time. I know I've taken more time than I scheduled you for, Tyler, but I got to ask you just one more question. And the genesis behind this question is, when I started this podcast, everyone said like, hey, Kent, you'll never be able to solve this problem of affordable housing. And I was like, no, I beg to differ, because I just knew that it's all about collecting the pieces to the puzzle. And eventually we would all collect all the pieces to the puzzle, even if that's not in our lifetime. So I always want to ask you, folks like you, why do you think affordable housing, particularly the lack of a supply of affordable housing, has been so hard to solve for, man?
So, like I said, this is probably not the best thing for your podcast, but at the end of the day, it's because investors are greedy. They're trying to, and I don't mean the guys that have 1, 2, 5, 10 houses. I mean like BlackRock and these giant corporations that are squeezing every penny out of the middle class that they can. That to me is the biggest problem. If you've got guys that have a dozen houses, 2 dozen houses, something like that, it's not creating the same problem that these giant corporations have.
Man, that's such a great perspective, man. And dude, I can't thank you enough for coming on to the podcast today, Tyler. I think
I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Dude, you have truly like just pulled back the current on so many things, because I remember when I first started, Tyler, I was so afraid. I was deathly afraid, man, because I was like, what if there's a foundation issue? And had I known that I had a friend in someone like Tyler that, hey, if there's a foundation issue, this is literally what he would do. And I could just put a number attached to a number and figure out like, okay, if that happens, this is what it means to my pro forma. This is what it means to the numbers downstream. And now all of a sudden, it's not that scary of a problem anymore if you have a team or a person that can execute. So you are such a big piece to that puzzle of how we solve for affordable housing, Tyler. Because without people like you, I would have never had the home I grew up in. And more importantly, I would have never had the confidence to say, hey, I want to invest in Kansas City because I got a friend in Tyler over there. So, man, I appreciate you so much, man.
Yeah, likewise.
Dude, hey, we got to get you back on the podcast in probably a year from now. I want to hear more about what you're doing. I want to hear more about the projects you're working. I love that you're just freaking turning around like 10, 12 of these, full gut rehabs, placing a tenant in there, helping investors, helping tenants with a high quality product. Man, for people that want to reach out to you, Tyler, where can they get in touch with you, man?
Just give me a call.
Do you prefer email or you really want a phone call?
I'll answer this phone 24 hours a day.
All right. Do you really want to give out your phone number, or would you rather give out your email? What do you prefer?
You can have my phone number. I mean, you already have my phone number. You can put it out there. I'm not scared. Well,
what's your phone number? You want to say it out loud for everybody?
Sure.
All right. Go ahead.
816-739-7350.
All right, guys. If you guys ever got a project in Kansas City and Johnson County, you got to make sure you hit up Tyler. At least you know you got a trusted opinion, the guy that knows what he's doing, a guy that's been experienced, and at least take the first step that way. So for those of you that really enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you leave a 5-star review on the podcast. Man, if you guys could just leave a review and start the comment off with like, hey, best podcast about affordable housing, I would really appreciate that. This is how we share information like what Tyler has shared with you today, with the rest of the world, and so that we can stay relevant. When ChatGPT is taking over the world, this is the only way to stay relevant. So I appreciate you all so much. Tyler, thank you so much for coming on again.
Yep.
All right.
Take care.
And we are out.